Vegeta has taken some of the most painful, humiliating, and downright brutal beatings in Dragon Ball history. And today, I'm ranking all of them from F tier to Z tier. Now, just so we're clear, this isn't about which beatdowns are my favorites or which ones were the coolest. This list is all about severity. Z tier is the absolute worst, the kind of beatdowns where Vegeta is left broken physically and probably mentally. F tier, those are the quick losses or minor scuffles that barely left a mark. Everything else falls somewhere in between. Oh, and these are going to be covered in random order too. And while you're here, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hype the video. It's a new feature on YouTube that really helps videos get out there to more Dragon Ball fans like yourself. Anyways, enjoy the video. Vegeta vs. Hit wasn't really a fight. It was a showcase of how badly Vegeta could get outclassed. Even with Super Saiyan Blue, he couldn't touch Hit. The time skip was too much. Vegeta got smacked around effortlessly, taking shots to the head, the gut, and other vital spots without landing a single blow of his own. Hit even took the time to flex on him in the middle of the beatdown, just to rub it in. The finishing gut punch was so vicious it knocked Vegeta out cold. And that's what makes this one sting. Vegeta didn't just lose, he literally didn't land a single attack. Imagine what Hit could have done if the tournament didn't have a no-kill rule. Vegeta wouldn't have walked away from this one at all. Severe, humiliating, and over quick. That's why this beatdown earns its place in A tier. Vegeta came in thinking he might make a dent against Bojack, but the reality was the opposite. After a quick exchange of ki blasts, Bojack turned it up and started dominating. He hit Vegeta so hard at one point that even Bojack's clothes started ripping, which tells you how heavy those blows were. The fight didn't last long. Vegeta was overwhelmed almost immediately and knocked out before he could do much of anything. It wasn't the worst beatdown he's ever taken, but it was still a rough showing. This one sits neatly in D tier. This beating might be one of the wildest on the entire list. Focusing on Vegeta's final showdown with Gas after he made the universe's strongest wish, it started ugly and only got worse. Vegeta leapt over his own sphere of destruction, only to get kicked viciously in the gut midair, grabbed by the hair, punched in the same spot over and over, and then launched away. And that was just the opening act. From there, Gas turned Vegeta into target practice. He teleported him all over the planet just to smack him around, beating him so bad he ended up with a black eye worse than the one Granolah gave him, probably had his ribs shattered, and ate an uppercut so nasty it looked like the end right then and there. But somehow, Vegeta dragged himself back up, charged forward again, and collapsed mid-attack. Literally passed out in the middle of a strike. That might be the first time in Dragon Ball history we've seen anything like that. And the craziest part was, Gas still wasn't anywhere near done. He had energy to spare while Vegeta was completely wrecked. On top of that, you've got the honorable mention, when Berserk Gas went after Vegeta for no reason just to beat him up when he wasn't even part of the fight. Like, come on. This wasn't just one beating, it was like 5 rolled into one. No question about it, this sits firmly in Z tier. This one's more comedy than anything, but it still technically counts. During the Tournament of Power, Vegeta let Catopezra tee off on his face over and over just to see whether he could push himself toward Ultra Instinct. Catopezra was landing punches, sure, but only because Vegeta was letting him. It wasn't serious damage, just a goofy moment that stood out in the middle of all the chaos. Still, if we're classifying it as a beatdown, it's one of the lightest ones he's ever taken. Easy F tier. This fight against Metal Cooler was brutal, and honestly, one I wouldn't wish on anybody, especially if you're a guy. From the start, it was obvious Vegeta was outmatched. He got smacked across the battlefield right away, then came back only to have his leg nearly snapped and his face almost blasted off within seconds. And just when you thought it couldn't get worse, Cooler nailed him with a straight up nut shot. That's something we rarely see in Dragon Ball, and it left him pretty much finished on the spot. But it didn't stop there. An entire army of Metal Coolers swarmed him and Goku, strung them up inside the big Getty Star-like puppets, and drained their energy in one of the most painful looking scenes ever. Vegeta was left drooling from it all. That's how bad it was. For the severity and humiliation, this one's gotta be A tier. This is one of those beatings that flies under the radar, but it's still worth pointing out. After the chaos on Namek, Vegeta came back pretty broken inside, even if he didn't want to admit it. He thought Goku and Frieza had taken each other out, so in his mind, that left him as the strongest in the universe. Problem was, the only one standing in his way at the time, aside from Piccolo, was Kid Gohan, fighting to defend his dad's honor. Now, Vegeta ultimately won this fight, no question. But not before Gohan managed to rough him up a little, mostly because Vegeta underestimated him in that classic Saiyan arrogance. The truth is, the beating here wasn't really about the damage Gohan did. It was mental. Vegeta might have won the battle, but the Prince of all Saiyans was losing the bigger war. He was shaken, vulnerable, and clearly carrying the weight of what had just happened on Namek. All he really got out of this fight was the hollow satisfaction of mocking a grieving child while stomping him into the ground. That's not much of a win in the grand scheme of things. So yeah, not a career-defining loss by any stretch, but still a notable bruise to his pride. For me, this lands in D tier. Letting Cell reach his perfect form might be Vegeta's dumbest move ever, and the beating he took right after proves it. From the start, Cell was just toying with him. Vegeta landed a kick, but Cell didn't even flinch. That was the wake-up call. Vegeta wasn't anywhere near his level. Desperate, he tried to bait Cell into taking his final flash. It connected, sure, but Cell just regenerated, walked through Vegeta's follow-up blasts, and swatted him away like it was nothing. The punch rocked him, but the real damage came from the follow-up. A vicious kick that sent Vegeta flying before Cell drove an elbow into his back so hard it knocked him straight into the ground and left him unconscious. Vegeta had no chance here. Cell absolutely buried him, literally and figuratively. This one earns a spot in A tier. When Baby took control of Gohan, he went straight at Vegeta and wasn't holding back. At one point, he literally dragged Vegeta's face across the ground, a pretty savage move. Still, despite the rough treatment, Vegeta didn't actually take much real damage. Things only picked up once Goten jumped in, but even then, the only real result was a cut bad enough for Baby to use it as a way to take over Vegeta's body. So while it looked rough in the moment, it wasn't exactly a beatdown worth ranking high. This one sits in F tier. Vegeta vs Fat Boo wasn't just a loss, it was a straight massacre. At first, Vegeta looked like he might have the upper hand, but that was just a front. Nothing he did could keep up with Boo's regeneration, and every exchange just left Vegeta worse off. At one point, Boo casually released an explosive wave while mumbling in that creepy deep voice, and it blew Vegeta away like it was nothing. And keep in mind, this was Boo barely even trying. From there, things went downhill fast. Boo ripped off a piece of his body, wrapped Vegeta up, and left him completely stuck. Then came the real beating. Boo kicked him around, stomped on him, jumped on him, and hammered him with punches over and over again. Those hits were so vicious, you could practically feel them through the screen. The only reason Vegeta even got free was thanks to Goten and Trunks stepping in, which was probably its own hit to his pride. By then, he was so battered he couldn't keep fighting. He blacked out, and when he came to, he knew the only option left was to sacrifice himself. And he did, blowing himself up in one of the rawest moments in Dragon Ball history. This was one of the rare times Vegeta ended up dying after a beatdown, and it showed him completely helpless in a way we almost never see. No doubt about it, this one's Z tier, an absolute demolition. Vegeta's full fight with Toppo in the Tournament of Power doesn't get talked about much, but it was a solid scrap. Early on, before Toppo tapped into his God of Destruction powers, he actually gave Vegeta some trouble. Even caught him in the same kind of hold he used on Goku during the Zen exhibition. You could argue Vegeta was only struggling here because he wasn't fully locked in, but either way, Toppo wasn't making it easy. Things shifted when Toppo transformed. Suddenly, he was on another level, and Vegeta admitted to himself that Toppo didn't feel like the same fighter anymore. The hits got heavier, and Vegeta was definitely feeling it. He had to pull out a refined final explosion to put Toppo down, and while it worked, it also drained almost everything Vegeta had left. So yeah, Vegeta took a fair amount of damage here, but even with both phases of the fight, it never felt like a knockout level beatdown. Toppo landed his shots, but they weren't career enders. This one sits comfortably in C tier. Vegeta and future Trunks didn't really trade many blows, but the little they did was memorable. The big clash came when Vegeta wanted Cell to reach his perfect form, while Trunks was dead set against it, knowing how dangerous that would be. To stop his father, Trunks blasted Vegeta clear across the battlefield, sending him flying into the ocean. Vegeta came out of it a little scuffed up, wiping some blood away, but it was nothing he couldn't handle. And honestly, it's pretty obvious Trunks was holding back. Still, it was hilarious seeing Vegeta blindsided like that, especially since he didn't expect his own son to take him out of the picture. So yeah, not really a beatdown in the grand sense, but entertaining for what it was. This sits comfortably in F tier. You don't need a living opponent to hand out a beating. Vegeta's time in the Capsule Core Gravity Chamber proves that. Desperate to hit Super Saiyan, he cranked the machine up to insane levels, training under 300 times to 450 times normal gravity. On top of that, he had to deal with robots programmed to throw his own attacks right back at him. Under that kind of pressure, every hit landed harder, and Vegeta kept getting knocked down again and again, sometimes by his own blasts. Things escalated to the point where the chamber literally exploded, and Vegeta tanked the blast head on. That left him so battered he was basically hospitalized afterward. Of course, this one's on him, nobody forced him into it, but it did give us a silver lining. Bulma stepped in to take care of him, and that sympathy was the first step toward the relationship we all know later. So while it was a brutal, self-inflicted beatdown, it wasn't a career-ending one, just Vegeta pushing himself too far. For severity's sake, this one belongs in D tier. Vegeta went into his fight with Jiren thinking he might break through, but reality hit fast. Most of his attacks didn't even scratch Jiren, and the one standout moment, breaking through his defenses once, was impressive, but it didn't change the outcome. Once Jiren stopped playing around, he came in like a freight train. He tore through Vegeta, then hit him with a blast so massive that Vegeta barely made it out alive. And if that wasn't enough, Jiren shrugged off Vegeta's final flash like it was nothing, then snuck in with another blast that trapped Vegeta inside before blowing him up completely. When the dust settled, all Vegeta could do was collapse in the crater left behind. The fight didn't last long, but it didn't need to. Jiren made his point loud and clear. Vegeta was tough enough to hang on to a shred of dignity, but make no mistake, this was a beating. I'd rank it in A tier. Vegeta never fought 17 in the main timeline, but in Trunks' future, the two crossed paths, and it was short-lived. There wasn't much of a fight at all. Vegeta got shot out of the sky, blasted, and killed almost instantly. It honestly mirrors the way future Gohan went out. Quick, tragic, and with Vegeta's last word being a simple no. The thing is, there's not a lot to unpack here. It was one of those blink and you'll miss it deaths that lasted all of 3 seconds. Sad? Sure, but nowhere near the kind of drawn out beating we're used to seeing Vegeta take. This one's an easy F tier. For most of this fight, Vegeta was frozen in fear, completely paralyzed just watching Broly tear through everyone. And honestly, he probably should have stayed on the sidelines, because the moment he finally stepped in, things went bad fast. Broly grabbed him, slammed him into a massive rock, and basically fist pumped him into unconsciousness. It was painful, but compared to the beatings Vegeta's taken elsewhere, this barely registers. It was short, brutal, and over before it could even get going. Easy F tier. The Goku Black arc has so many retreats and rematches that it's tough to pin down Vegeta's worst beating, but his first clash with Black stands out. At the start, Vegeta came in hot with Super Saiyan Blue and was hammering away, but somehow, Black, in his base form, tanked it all with a smile. Then he turned it around with a vicious kick and revealed Super Saiyan Rose, which flipped the entire fight. Before long, Vegeta got stabbed through the chest and knocked out cold. The manga version is just as bad, maybe worse. Black transformed into a regular Super Saiyan and still managed to overpower Vegeta in Super Saiyan Blue. That's insane. Vegeta had to use a sensu bean just to keep going, but eventually, Rose Black put him down there too. Since both takes are so different, I'd split the ranking. The anime fight lands in C tier since Vegeta dominated early but just wasn't ready for Rose. The manga version? That's a B tier, way more brutal. On Namek, Vegeta wasn't holding back. He was knocking names off the hit list one by one. Kui, Dodoria, all gone. But when he ran into Zarbon, things didn't go the way he expected. At first, it looked like Vegeta had him covered. He'd powered up a lot since his fight on Earth with Goku, so he came in confident. The problem was, Zarbon had a whole second form he hadn't shown yet, and once he transformed, Vegeta didn't stand a chance. Zarbon completely dominated him, pounding him, headbutting him, just playing with his food. And the finisher? Brutal. Zarbon carried him high into the air and drilled him into the ground and the waters of Namek with an aerial pile driver so nasty it nearly killed him. Zarbon even thought the job was done and flew off, leaving Vegeta crawling out of the water, gasping for air before finally passing out. And what's crazy is, Zarbon had enough time to meet with Frieza, have a full conversation, come back, and Vegeta was still unconscious. That's how bad the beating was. What made it worse was the mental hit. Zarbon let it slip that Frieza could transform too. Imagine getting worked over this badly by one of Frieza's henchmen, and then realizing the boss himself had even more tricks up his sleeve. That's enough to mess with anyone's head. Still, Vegeta didn't die here. As humiliating as it was, he crawled away vowing to get stronger and finally put Frieza down. So while it wasn't his absolute worst loss, it was definitely a humbling one. This one's sitting solid in A tier. Granolah being crowned the universe's strongest wasn't just a title, he proved it against Vegeta. Things started off decently with Vegeta and Super Saiyan Blue evolved, but it all went south fast. Granolah landed a pressure point hit that had Vegeta coughing up blood, and in Dragon Ball Super, we barely see blood like that. It was a sign of how brutal this fight was about to get. Then Vegeta revealed Ultra Ego, a form that actually makes him stronger with the more damage he takes. Sounds great in theory, but in practice, that meant Vegeta let himself eat a ridiculous amount of punishment. Kicks, punches, energy blasts, Granolah threw it all at him. He lost so much blood that he nearly blacked out mid-battle, even admitting he'd taken too much damage. At one point, Granolah pinned him down and unloaded a point-blank barrage of blasts that straight up knocked him out. And yet somehow, Vegeta kept dragging himself back to his feet, bloody, shaking, and with one eye taken out. He even tried to keep fighting before getting blasted away again and nearly finished off, only saved at the last second by Goku stepping in. For everything Vegeta's gone through, this still stands as one of the nastiest, most powerful beatdowns he's endured. No way around it, this is Z tier, and if it ever gets animated, this is going to be one of the hardest beatdowns to watch on screen. This beatdown was almost comical. Vegeta charged straight at Janemba, only to get snatched by the neck, hurled clear across hell, and launched into a massive pile of spikes way off in the distance. Brutal in execution, but the whole thing played out so quickly it's hard not to laugh a little. It was definitely painful, and Vegeta ended up more banged up than you'd expect from such a short encounter, but it wasn't anywhere near career ending. For what it is, this one lands in D tier. This one's worth mentioning even though most of it happens off screen. In Dragon Ball Super Superhero, we all know Goku and Vegeta went at it, but we don't actually see much of the fight. It's safe to assume they were dishing out some serious blows to each other, but the clearest picture comes from the manga version, where Vegeta takes a nasty gut punch that really sells the damage. Beyond that, there's not much detail to work with. It wasn't anything crazy, just another hard-fought spar between the two. The difference this time? Vegeta came out on top. Since so much of it is left to the imagination, I'd call this a D tier beatdown. Not severe, not career ending, but hey, at least Vegeta got the W. Vegeta came to Earth thinking it was gonna be sweet, but he couldn't have been more wrong. Sure, he breezed through Yamcha, Chaozu, Tien, and even Piccolo without breaking a sweat, but once Goku showed up, the real beating started. Goku hit him with the Kaioken and pushed him further than he ever expected. It's safe to say Vegeta was feeling it. Things got so bad, he tried ending the fight with a Gallic Gun, only for Goku to counter with a Kamehameha stacked with Kaioken, and that left Vegeta even more battered. And when he thought he could turn it around with his Great Ape form, it didn't work out. He got his eye shot, Yajirobe sliced off his tail, and even Gohan damaged him in his base form. Then came the Spirit Bomb, another sword slash from Yajirobe, and Gohan crushing him as an ape. The cherry on top? Vegeta almost died when Krillin nearly finished him off with Yajirobe's sword, which, by the way, would have been the third time that blade touched him. That's wild. By the end, Vegeta was beaten down so badly that he had to do something he almost never does: retreat. Physically, he was wrecked, but the mental damage might have been worse. The so-called elite had been humbled by fighters he thought were beneath him, and the lesson stuck. This was the fight that made him ditch his scouter after seeing how Earthlings could mask and raise their power levels on command. For Vegeta, this was his first true beatdown, and it came at the hands of the people he least respected. That's crushing. Easy Z tier. When the Ginyu Force landed on Namek, Vegeta already knew things were about to go south. He tried to get immortality with the Dragon Balls, but he was too late, and instead, he had to deal with Raccoon. What's wild is that Vegeta actually came out swinging. He ragdolled Recoome, blasted him with everything he had, and honestly looked pretty savage doing it. The problem was, Recoome was basically humoring him. You could tell he was letting Vegeta get his hits in just for fun, and once he got bored, the real fight started, and Vegeta was completely screwed. Recoome dominated him, slammed him into the ground, yanked him back out like a vegetable, and even cracked a joke about it, and just toyed with him. Still, Vegeta didn't fold right away. He blasted Recoome in the face to buy himself a little time, even if it barely scratched him. But by that point, Vegeta was in such rough shape that if Gohan and Krillin hadn't jumped in, he would have been erased on the spot by Recoome's eraser gun. Vegeta even admitted that he couldn't have moved out the way on his own. So yeah, the beating was rough, painful to watch even, but it wasn't his absolute worst, and he went down fighting. For me, this sits at a solid B tier. This one's not about fists, but it still counts. Throughout the Cell Saga, Vegeta's pride kept getting chipped away, and Goku added to it in his own way. Goku was so confident in Gohan's ability to beat Cell that he basically brushed Vegeta off completely. He flat out told him that he himself was stronger, leaving Vegeta seething. It wasn't a physical beating, but mentally, it stung. Once again, Vegeta was reminded that no matter how far he pushed himself, Goku was still ahead. That frustration ran so deep that when Goku sacrificed himself to stop Cell, Vegeta even considered giving up fighting altogether. So yeah, it was impactful, but compared to the brutal physical beatings he's taken, this one didn't leave any lasting scars. Call it what it is, an F-tier beatdown. Vegeta's fight with Super Android 13 was equal parts embarrassing and hilarious, but it was still a rough beatdown. His punches didn't even phase 13, and it went downhill fast from there. First, Vegeta got scooped up and slammed into the ground with what can only be described as the dive of death, and it looked ridiculous, but painful at the same time. Then 13 blasted him straight into Krillin just to rub it in before pulling off the most brutal move of the fight. He hoisted Vegeta up and slammed him across his knee in a way that felt like Bane breaking Batman's back, except dialed up to 10. Vegeta bent like a rag doll, and for a second it looked like he might actually snap in half. Painful? Absolutely, but compared to some of his worst losses, this wasn't the most devastating. And since 13 didn't even focus all his attention on Vegeta, he at least got in a few breathers between hits. Overall, this one fits neatly in B tier. This one's short, but Vegeta came in swinging. After being brought back to Earth, he refused to fuse with Goku right away and decided to take on Super Buu, who had already absorbed Gohan, on his own. Vegeta went all in with Super Saiyan 2, throwing out everything he had, but it didn't matter. Buhan's power was just too overwhelming. Vegeta got tossed around, took some heavy hits, and even ended up locked in a full Nelson at one point. The fight didn't drag on too long, but while it lasted, Vegeta definitely caught a beating. Still, compared to some of the absolute demolitions he's been through, this one wasn't even close to the worst. All things considered, I'd call this one a C-tier beatdown. Vegeta's fight with Beerus was brutal in its own way. Honestly, you could argue it was worse than what Goku got the first time around. We've got two takes on this fight, the movie and the anime, but the anime really nails the full picture, so that's the one to go with. From the jump, Vegeta never stood a chance. It was a complete mismatch. On top of that, he had to humiliate himself just to try and keep Beerus from blowing up Earth. Dancing, cooking, begging, anything to stall him. And when Beerus decided to get serious, Vegeta was crushed instantly. Beerus even stomped his head into the ground and casually reminded him that his father had been in the exact same position years ago. The disrespect there is unreal. Sure, Vegeta had a burst of rage power after Beerus slapped Bulma and even got in a few solid shots, but it didn't last. Beerus swatted him down again and almost erased him along with the entire planet before Goku showed back up. Between his pride, his body, and the sheer humiliation, this one was bad. I almost want to throw it in Z tier, but the severity just doesn't quite hit the same as Vegeta's absolute worst losses. Beerus wasn't trying to torture him, just put him down. Still, it was a crazy beatdown across the board, and I'd slot it firmly in A tier. When Vegeta let Babidi take control and became Majin Vegeta, it set the stage for one of the most hype matchups in the series, Vegeta vs Goku, Round 2. And honestly, they both dished out and took plenty of punishment. Vegeta got slammed into rocks, punched, kicked, and left catching his breath more than once, but Goku was taking hits too. This was less a one-sided beatdown and more two rivals grinding each other down. The only real caveat is that Goku was holding back Super Saiyan 3, which would have tilted things in his favor. But in the moment, they were basically equals. The fight never reached a true conclusion thanks to Buu's arrival, so we'll never know for sure who would have walked away the winner. Still, Vegeta held his pride throughout and didn't walk away looking weak. He took a beating, but he gave just as much back. For that balance, this one lands in B tier. Vegeta actually caught a pretty nasty beating from Hachiak. The guy blasted him point blank with an energy beam that looked strong enough to wipe out the earth, and Vegeta took it head on. The impact left him wrecked, and at one point his back was nearly snapped. Very reminiscent of how Gohan almost got broken in Broly's Second Coming. It wasn't the longest fight, but it was brutal while it lasted. Hachiak made Vegeta look seriously outmatched, and watching it unfold was rough. Not his worst beating ever, but still crazy enough to stick out. This one lands in C tier. Calling this one a beatdown is a stretch, but I'll include it because someone in the comments would bring it up if I didn't. Vegeta spent most of the fight manhandling Goma, and the only reason he even took a couple of hits was because Super Saiyan 3 was draining his stamina. The fight never even got a proper conclusion. It literally ended because Vegeta decided he'd rather have bath time with Bulma. If anything, we as viewers took more of a beating watching this play out than Vegeta did. Hardly any damage on his end, so this one's an easy F tier. When Vegeta finally hit Super Saiyan, he thought he'd reached the top. In his mind, nobody could touch him now. Then Android 18 showed up and flipped his whole world upside down. Vegeta charged in with everything he had, but 18 wasn't even sweating. She smacked him around, mocked him, and made it painfully clear that Super Saiyan alone wasn't enough. Add her infinite stamina into the mix, and Vegeta never stood a chance. And then came the moment burned into every fan's memory. She snapped his arm. Vegeta dropped to the ground, screaming while she just stood there watching. And when he tried a surprise attack to save face, she broke his other arm too. And that was it. Vegeta passed out from the pain. Physically brutal, but honestly, the mental part was worse. The form he chased for years, the one he thought made him untouchable, wasn't enough to take down an android. The humiliation cut so deep that Vegeta spent 3 days standing on a rock, refusing to move, just replaying the loss in his head. He only snapped out of it when Goku pitched the idea of training in the hyperbolic time chamber. But make no mistake, he didn't walk away from this fight with much dignity left. This one's an easy Z tier, absolutely brutal. It feels weird to say that a space rock gave Vegeta trouble, but that's exactly what happened. He even admitted the meteor could have taken his life. Under normal circumstances, this would have been nothing for him, but because he just finished training in 450 times normal gravity, he was completely worn out. That exhaustion turned the meteor into a real problem, and it ended up sending him crashing down, way more banged up than you'd expect from something so simple. On the surface, it was just a rock, nothing more. But the bigger deal here was the mental side. This moment pushed Vegeta deeper into his frustration and self-loathing, which ended up fueling his transformation into a Super Saiyan. So while the meteor itself wasn't a career-defining beatdown, it did leave a lasting mark on his story. All in all, it wasn't the worst thing he endured, but the meaning behind it keeps it memorable. This one goes in C tier. Vegeta's fight with Omega Shenron gave us one of his more intense GT beatdowns, especially after Goku was seemingly taken out of the picture. Things moved fast, but every hit landed hard. Vegeta was already getting worked over before Goten, Gohan, and Trunks showed up, and when he tried to step back in, it got ugly. Omega stabbed him in the shoulder with his back spikes, leaving a wound the size of a bowling ball, and then followed it up with his Dragon Thunder technique. So not only did Vegeta have a massive hole in his shoulder, but he got lit up with electricity on top of it. That combo was enough to knock him out of Super Saiyan completely, and at that point, the fight was basically done. It wasn't the worst beatdown we've seen Vegeta take, but it was still brutal and tough to watch. This one belongs in B tier. The Cell Juniors gave everyone trouble, and Vegeta was no exception. He might have held his ground a little better than some others, but he still took his share of hits. And it makes sense. Each Cell Junior had the power of Perfect Cell, so they were no joke. We didn't see much of the fight, and it never had a real conclusion since Gohan's transformation ended everything. But one Cell Jr. did land a clean shot on Vegeta and spun him around like a windmill. Funny to watch, even if it had him hurting. Nothing that knocked him out of Super Saiyan or anything, but enough to leave a mark. So, not a beating Vegeta couldn't handle. If the fight had dragged on longer, it probably would have been worse, but as it stands, this one's an F tier. This one was short, but it said everything it needed to. When Frieza unveiled his black form, he one-shotted both Goku and Vegeta in their strongest states. Vegeta, in full Ultra Ego, got floored by a single blow. One hit, and he was left writhing on the ground, completely incapacitated. What makes it worse is that it wasn't some sneak attack. Vegeta was ready, fully powered up, and still dropped instantly. Compare that to Beerus. Vegeta's taken multiple hits from him before going down right away. The fact that Black Frieza put him out so easily says a lot about just how scary this form really is. Since it was only one attack, I can't put it in Z tier, but in terms of sheer severity, definitely in A tier. Vegeta could barely move afterward. Vegeta should honestly be glad he wasn't the only one fighting Super 17, because even with backup from Goten, Gohan, Oob, and Trunks, it was a losing battle. But when everyone else dropped out and Vegeta ended up being the last one standing, things got ugly. He couldn't even touch 17. Instead, he was blasted into the air, gut punched repeatedly, and juggled around like a rag doll. It got to the point where Vegeta was seconds away from being finished off completely before Goku swooped back in to save him. To his credit, Vegeta hung in there until the end, which means the beating dragged on longer than it probably should have. By the time it was over, he was in rough shape, no question. Not his worst by a long shot, but still pretty bad. This one's a C tier. Vegeta didn't get much screen time against Hirudegarn, and honestly, he didn't last long at all. He got swatted away by the monster's tail early on, then stepped in to protect some innocent people from Hirudegarn's fire breath. Noble move, but it left him completely drained and he passed out not long after. Quick, one-sided, and over before Vegeta could even show what he had. This one's an easy F tier. Vegeta took a few losses to Moro, but the worst came after he got forced spirit fission. At first, it looked like things were finally turning in his favor. He pummeled Moro and had him on the ropes. But with Vegeta, victories never last long. Moro slipped away using his magic, absorbed OG-73, and transformed into something completely new. Vegeta was the first to suffer for it. He got smacked straight into the ground, knocked out of Super Saiyan Blue Evolved, and when he tried to charge back in, he couldn't even touch Moro anymore. Moro grabbed him by the neck, copied his abilities, and then beat him into the dirt. The insult to injury, he finished Vegeta off with his own Big Bang attack, now backed by forced spirit fission. That's just brutal. The fight didn't drag on, but it didn't need to. Quick, decisive, and humiliating. Moro shut Vegeta down completely. That makes this an A-tier beatdown. Vegeta's fight with Kid Buu is easily one of the craziest beatdowns he's ever taken, because it really shows just how much punishment he could endure before collapsing. As a Super Saiyan 2, he got everything thrown at him. Choked, punched, kicked, blasted, you name it, Buu dished it out. And on top of that, Kid Buu was literally emoting on him mid-fight, like he wasn't even worth taking seriously. What's wild is how many times Vegeta kept forcing himself back onto his feet, only to be dropped again. At one point, Kid Buu blasted him in the face point blank and sent him crashing into a crater, unconscious. Vegeta looked done, but he still managed to get back up. Even Kid Buu was shocked, getting visibly annoyed like, why won't you just stay down? The beating dragged on forever, and through it all, Vegeta stayed standing for one reason: to buy Goku time. First for Super Saiyan 3, and later for the Spirit Bomb. He knew he was outclassed, but he refused to go down looking weak, and that stubborn pride made the fight strangely admirable, even while it was brutal to watch. Severity-wise, this is about as bad as it gets. Vegeta hung on to his dignity, sure, but the sheer amount of pain he took here makes this a clear Z tier. Anything lower would be disrespectful. Everything on Namek built up to Vegeta finally facing Frieza, and when it happened, devastating doesn't even cover it. Vegeta had spent the whole saga hyping himself up as a Super Saiyan. He even let Krillin nearly kill him just so Dende could heal him, hoping that boost would push him over the edge. He almost died for it, and honestly, it probably would have been kinder if he had, because what Frieza had waiting for him was way worse. Vegeta threw everything he had at Frieza, every ounce of power, every trick in his arsenal, and it didn't matter. Frieza didn't even break a sweat. Before the beating even started, Vegeta had already lost the fight mentally. For the first time, we saw him cry, not from pain, but from realizing he wasn't the warrior he thought he was. All the Namekians he'd slaughtered, all the battles he fought chasing power, it added up to nothing. He wasn't a Super Saiyan, he wasn't all powerful, and compared to Frieza, he was nothing. And then came the physical punishment. In front of Krillin, Gohan, and Piccolo, Vegeta was pummeled, knocked into the water, smashed into the ground, beaten in the back over and over while Frieza mocked him. Frieza even held him up by the tail, making him suffer while keeping him alive on purpose. And when he was done playing, he tossed Vegeta aside like garbage, ready to finish him off. The lowest moment came right after. Frieza shot him through the heart. In his final breath, Vegeta begged Goku, to avenge the Saiyan race and put Frieza down. That was the end of his pride, the end of his dignity, and the clearest picture we'd seen yet of Vegeta broken completely. This wasn't just a beating, it was a total annihilation, physically, mentally, and emotionally. Undeniably Z tier. So yeah, some of these beatdowns were flat out demolitions, and others barely counted. Let me know which one you think was Vegeta's worst, and if I ranked any of them too high or too low. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hype it so more people can see it. Thanks for watching, and catch you in the next one.